One night I was walking home with my friend and somebody who we both just met, and as my friend left, I gave him a high five just because of the way that situation turned out. But seeing the other person, I didn't want them to feel left out, and so then I gave them a high five as well. My friend joked that that was the most awkward thing ever and that they were going to make fun of me now, sarcastically, as they went back to their apartments. And that story inspired me to make this video because I truly had never heard the word awkward used in my life for so long, because so long ago I phased it out of my life completely. The quote that helped me not become awkward was to simply remember that nothing is awkward unless I let it be awkward. In other words, I completely removed awkward from my vocabulary, and that's why this situation struck me so much, because I didn't care. I tried to make everyone feel inclusive, but in the end, people can always judge you from the outside. And the first way that I faced into never being awkward was to stop caring so much about the minute details or other people's opinions. A lot of the times in my life, I stuck myself to one identity. I'm a student, I'm an athlete, I'm someone who plays video games, I'm whatever. But in the end, that sort of identification and that sole identification to one purpose is something that would ruin my self-perception, because if I failed in that one sense, then I would never be able to go back from that. I had failed, and then my whole entire happiness, my whole entire vision of myself had been completely destroyed because I was not able to maintain that one perception of myself. It's like when people have these different descriptions on their LinkedIn bio where they say something like a CEO, an entrepreneur, a parent, an author. And that is the exact definition of self-complexity, or in other words, seeing yourself through multiple different perspectives and lenses. Again, we are one consciousness, we are one body, but the ability to see ourselves from different perspectives, from where we are in certain situations to other situations, such as a friend, a partner, a student, a teacher, whatever we want to see ourselves as, gives us multiple opportunities to let ourselves be happy with the way we are in our life. And by seeing ourselves with such great self-complexity, we're able to be more confident in ourselves and to be able to put past the little things in our life. I know a lot of the times on social media, I see people joking about the times where they did something that they felt was super embarrassing, and they just go back to it when they're about to go to sleep or at random times of the day. But when I do something that could be considered awkward or embarrassing, I just look past it. I do not care so much about the minute details of life, which leads me to the second point, which is that I always take different events with a smile, or I do not take myself so seriously. In other words, if I'm walking and I drop something and I go to pick it up and then I drop it again in front of everybody in a dining hall, then I don't really care. It's a mistake and everybody makes mistakes. And in the end, nobody's going to really care that much because everybody's thinking about themselves. I never see something that I do as awkward because I always understand that humans are prone to error and that we cannot be perfect in our life. Again, having the courage and the vulnerability to see yourself as someone who's prone to flaws, but being able to forgive yourself for those flaws as well, is what's going to make you not see yourself as awkward ever again. I never had the issue of being embarrassed in these certain situations because I never took the actions that I took in my life so seriously. And once I stopped taking myself so seriously, I was able to have more fun with what I did in my life and not look back mortified at some random things that happened in my life. I have another story about this because I would see people going around trying to find a room to study in, for example, and then when they see someone in the room, they just slam the door shut, like they're literally about to get attacked by something that's in the room. But just checking a room, for example, is not an awkward thing to do. In fact, most of the time, no one's ever really booked that room in particular. It's just the fact that people are staying in that room and people get so frightened of the fact that they're interrupting somebody that they suddenly feel the need to slam the door shut, for example. But if I'm looking for a room and I see that somebody's in there after I open the door, you can just acknowledge them and leave. Nothing has ever been done and there's no harm and no foul. Just taking myself less seriously in all these random situations and looking at these situations with a more humorous eye has been able to make me remove myself from being awkward. I never saw myself as awkward in the past months or years, so much to the fact that having one person bring up that word made me want to make this video in the first place. The third reason I'm never awkward is because I'm not afraid to ask for what I want. There's so many friends that I know who are so scared of confrontation and so scared of asking people or approaching people in regards to different situations, whether it be someone they might find interesting, someone they want to be friends with, a potential romantic partner. All these situations require different confidence, vulnerability, and the ability to meet different people and ignore the possibility of some awkward situation coming out of it. But having the courage to approach someone in general is something that is admired by literally everyone in the human race. In fact, trying to approach someone to compliment them, for example, or trying to approach someone to be friends with them is something that is probably going to be appreciated by 99% of people that I would approach. And having the ability to understand that and then taking action with that in real life by just taking small steps to go forward with that sort of mindset into my life has made me more comfortable with doing whatever I want. And I never saw myself as awkward even when the situations turned out bad, because honestly, if I had the ability to do that and the other person wasn't accepting of that, then we just weren't meant to have that sort of friendship, and probably we just weren't a good fit for each other. Thus, in whatever situation, whether it's asking somebody the time of day, asking somebody the weather, and then them acting aggressive or perhaps not as happy toward me, I never saw it as a me problem. I saw it more as a them problem. Maybe they were having a bad day. Maybe they were doing something and they were very busy. Maybe they were just very involved in what they were doing and they didn't want to be interrupted. But in that case, I never blame myself for those types of perhaps faulty interactions or interactions that didn't always lead to 100% happiness and roses. But in those situations, it's important that, again, I don't take myself so seriously. I go forward with what I want, and if there's anything I do, I ask people for what I want. In class, I always ask the teacher questions when appropriate, and I'm never doubting myself in terms of the questions that I ask, because I'm confident in myself and my ability to ask good questions regarding the class content. I've been in situations where I would ask a question and then the professor wouldn't really understand what I was saying and I would have to repeat it, but again, that was when I would feel most uncomfortable. But again, I never saw it as something that was awkward, because I understand that there's going to be times like that, and that will only make my ability to form questions in the future stronger. And that's why this tip is so important. Just being able to ask what you want, approach people that you want to approach, do whatever you want to do with your life. And if the situation or the conversation doesn't turn out how you expect, then at least you know and you don't have to live with the regret, because that is even worse than the hint of rejection that you may receive in whatever situation. Another reason I'm never awkward is because I never approach confrontation aggressively. Again, I would have friends, for example, who would look for rooms for studying, for example. They'd say that they would walk into a room and say, I have this room reserved to the person sitting there, in which the person would obviously contort back in a confrontational tone, actually, I have this room reserved. And then it would be a whole argument that would eventually lead to no solution and nobody getting what they want. So, in situations where there is confrontation, I always find it important to step back and to look at the situation from a neutral perspective. And approaching situations from a neutral perspective allows me to word it so that there's no accusation in the tone. If I said something like, I had this room reserved, then it immediately puts the other person in a defensive position. If I went up to them in a more lighter tone or happy tone with a smile and said, hi, I believe I have this room reserved, then perhaps the other person would be more open to a happy or neutral tone when speaking with me, rather than me approaching them aggressively in a sense to try to remove them from the room forcefully. But to apply that story in general, if I ever want something, if I ever have a conflict with somebody else, I always try to step back for at least a few minutes, or if possible an hour or a day, and then I look back at that situation and I analyze it from a more holistic perspective. Is this really something for me to get mad about? Is this really something for me to argue about? Or should I take the time to inform my opinion from multiple sides and understand the entirety of the situation and where I should go with it? Because if I understand that, then I can approach the situation from a more neutral perspective, and the emotions of the situation are removed and then left in the past. And in that case, confrontation never has to be so aggressive, and it never has to end with an awkward tension between two people. Perhaps I don't even know the other person, but then I'm already leaving it off on a bad tone. But if I approach it from a more neutral perspective, then I leave the room, and perhaps I get what I want, but perhaps I don't. But in the end, nobody is mad at each other, and nobody can leave the situation describing it as awkward, because it was a simple communication. And the final most important reason as to why I'm never awkward is because I am happy with myself and I'm grateful for the life that I live. Happiness and gratitude in my own life has prevented me from using awkwardness as a form of self-hate or a form of putting myself down. Because a lot of the times people who say that something was awkward truly don't have the confidence in themselves to look past that situation, and they always tend to have a negative self-image. I used to be more like that in the past, where I would see something and I would put myself down for different situations that I had in the past. But letting myself progress in life and letting myself see different situations from a more funny perspective, whether it be interacting with strangers or doing whatever, would allow myself to be less awkward and see myself as less awkward as I gained more practice and as I was more forgiving with myself and happy that I was able to socialize with all these different groups of people. In general, being happy with the way I have progressed in my life and being grateful for everything that I have been given in this life and everything that I've worked for in this life has allowed me to look past awkwardness as something that takes up my mind and shift my negative self-perspective, which is often a biological trait in human thinking, to a more positive perspective, where I look past the situation and I move on with my life, because in the end, it probably won't matter within the next week and definitely not within the next month or year. Also, I don't try to escape the responsibilities of life. A lot of the times people cope through different mechanisms in terms of removing themselves from the responsibilities that life provides them. I know that it's very easy to do so, and I'm not saying that I'm perfect either, but allowing myself to improve in this sense, rather than sort of pushing that mentality away and allowing myself to engage in those negative behaviors, is something that I have worked to move past and has allowed me to live life more gratefully, allow me to live life with full conscious perspective of what I'm doing and my actions, and has allowed me to see myself with more confidence and see myself with more power than I've ever had before. Allowing myself to look at my life from a perspective that I'm satisfied with and that I'm proud of has enabled me to look at any situation never as being awkward, but as simply being an event that happened in my life or something to learn from. And in the end, that's truly perhaps the most important reason as to why I've never left a situation within the past year thinking, wow, that was awkward. Again, nothing is awkward unless you let it be. Just remove awkwardness from your vocabulary. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.